Hi, hello, and welcome to my tiny corner of the internet. This is going to be quite a lengthy and arduous process of a hair transformation, and I wanted to show you truly the very beginning to the very end. So here you have it. I am the epitome of a before photo right now. So this is my hair. I washed it last night. Last time I got my hair done was basically the last video I posted of me getting my hand-tied extensions, and that was in January. I think that was end of January. So it's been a while. It's currently June, so I've got at least 4 months of grow out here. You can see my bangs. I have more of my natural color than I do of my bleach blonde. I'm growing out my bangs, by the way, which is why they are in this horrible, awkward middle stage of not quite going behind my ears, but are way too long to put straight, so dealing with that also. So basically, the overall goal for where I want this to end up is to bring down the brown more into the blonde. You can see it's kind of it's not too harsh of a line because, like I said, it was blended a while ago, so it's not terrible, but I'm going for more of a like super dimensional, almost like bronzy gradient. I don't know what to call it. There's so many words. I'll kind of show some inspiration pictures that I took from Pinterest, just really kind of like warm, messy, dimensional, like, I don't want to say balayage because it's not quite that. It's more of like dimensional with like a gradient top. And yeah, I mean, I'm gonna also be toning this. It has no toner in it. I haven't done absolutely one single thing to it since I got it done last in January. So basically my goal is to bring down this brown more, but with more of like a gradient and some dimensional lowlights. I have never done anything like that regarding like low light. I've blended extensions that were blonde to have a rooted top, but I've never put like low lights in anything before. I just watched a ton of videos, did some research on colors. I did some strand tests with different colors that I ordered, and I feel pretty prepared. As prepared as I'm ever gonna be. Not as prepared as I could be pre going to hair school. I'm not a hairdresser. I have no classical training in anything regarding hair or dye or extensions or anything like that, but I have experimented a lot on my own hair, on other people's hair. I've pretty much every single time I've gotten extensions except for this last time, I've done them on myself, so I at least feel comfortable experimenting on myself. And if I totally hate it, the stakes aren't super high. We're still in quarantine right now, so I'm not like going out and about on a daily basis. This seems to be the time to just say frick it, you know? I did do a strand test with some old extensions that I'll show you here. So these are 4 different browns that I tested out. These were going to be for the root and the lowlights. I ended up going with these 2. This one came out super like red, purpley, which I don't love, and this one I think was the ash. I wanted to try out one ash just to see what it would look like, and I don't think it's gonna fit the color palette that I am going for. If I can remember correctly, I think this was the 7NW and this was the 8. This was the 7A, and I think this was the 7G, I want to say. This one I'm going to use for the root area, and then I'm going to kind of use this one to blend out that gradient between the dark and the light, and then also bring down some highlights. So that's the brown. I did 4 different toners as well. I don't know why these two came out so dark and weird. They're supposed to be like a beigey color. I just wanted to see how the beige ones came out, and they're just a little too gray and dark for what I'm going for, obviously, so those two are out. These two are the 2 possibilities. The one here is what I decided on. It's a little bit less bright and a little bit warmer than this one. This is kind of just like a straight, like platinum icy blonde, and this one has some warmth to it, which I like for the overall color scheme that I'm going for. I'm gonna break this up pretty much into 3 sections. So step 1 is going to be to take my extensions that I have that are undyed and color those first. So those are going to start completely just yellow top to bottom, and I'm going to root those with a nice dark brown to match my dark brown, and then I'm going to pull some lowlights throughout them. So some kind of warm browns, some dark browns, really small, and just kind of play around with those and, you know, just kind of go for it with that. And then I'm going to tone those with a nice honey blonde color as well. So after I'm done with the extensions, then I'm going to move on to doing my hair and kind of do the same sort of process where I'm going to blend down this root here so it's a little bit warmer and more brown, and then I'm going to take my hair and put some highlights or lowlights in it as well. So I'm just going to take small pieces and dye them brown, and then I'm going to tone my hair to that honey blonde as well. And then step 3 is going to be applying the extensions to my head by myself. Yeah, so I've got my work cut out for me, that's for sure. But luckily, by the time I'm filming this intro, I've actually already done the extension portion. So I'll show you guys the footage from that and how that went, and then we'll move on to step 2. So first things first, here I am setting up my quote-unquote workstation. This is just an old hair cutting cape, and then I have some aluminum foil to actually use as my coloring surface for the extensions. So first of all, I am going to unbundle, if that's a word, each extension so I can lay them flat to be able to dye them once I have my gloves on. And then once those are all unbundled, I am going to start mixing my colors. So I'm using this beaker so that I can measure everything exactly and not leave anything up to chance. So I'm just putting each color into a different bowl and then setting the box behind it so I can keep track of which color is which. So as I mentioned, I ended up starting with the 7NW on the top, and I'm going to use that color to root all of the extensions across the board. And then as far as blending down the root into the midsection, I'm using that 8G color, which is just a nice warmed up brown. It's a little bit lighter than the 7, so it's going to give a nice gradient effect. And then what I'm going to do is, as you can see, I am just weaving a few little highlighted sections here, and I'm taking that 7NW or 8G kind of back and forth and applying it to the lowlights as well. That is 7NW, blending down with 8G, and then I'm going to weave, take a few pieces, and on the one before this I only went about 50% of the way down. On this one I went 100% of the way down. I also have to keep in mind that I am going to be taking a few inches off the bottom of these. I don't like my hair to be super long. I like it around 16 inches, so I'm trying to keep in mind how much I'm going to take off the bottom and incorporate that into how far I bring down the lowlights as well. So for that one, I only took the middle parts. I took much less. I want to kind of alternate back and forth between taking a lot and taking a little, going 50% of the way down, 25, 75, etc. So this one I only used the middle and went 50% of the way down. Again, I'm going to root 7NW, blend down with 8G, and I believe for that one I didn't do any lowlights at all. So I want to have a lot of variation between these, and I need to have a strong base of the blonde so that the brown doesn't completely take over. I think for all of the rest of them, I am not going to add any lowlights so that I have my primary color of that honey blonde as the majority of the bundle. So now that all of the roots and lowlights are applied, I'm going to start mixing my toner. And I'm going to start with the first one that I dyed, and I'm going to really use that toner to further blend down the brown. Now that the blonde is saturated with color, it's a lot easier to blend. So I'm just using my brush, taking it sideways, and really just using my fingers to pull down that brown and help blend it out. And I'm just repeating this on all of the extensions. So this is after I have washed out all of the color, and this is one of the first ones I did where I did a lot of lowlights. You can see the huge contrast between the brown and the blonde. I'm also going to be using this Remi Revitalize shampoo and conditioner. This is the same brand as the extensions, and it was made for these extensions, so I definitely want to do everything I can to keep these in good shape for as long as possible. So I'm just going to be using those on these extensions exclusively. So as I'm washing these out, I'm trying to be very careful with how I do it. I am taking the low lighted part first that is all brown and washing that out, and then I'm going to wash the blonde and then wash them out together so as not to get the brown on the blonde prematurely and have the color stick where I don't want it to. And I'm just going to be shampooing and conditioning each of them very carefully. So now that the extensions have been totally washed out, I just put a towel over the back of a chair and set them on there. I never blow dry my extensions, it always makes them super frizzy. I instead just set them like this and let them air dry overnight. It makes such a big difference, and they always feel so nice the next day. Okay, so that was the process for the extensions. It actually was easier than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like pieces were going to be flying and falling out everywhere, and I was going to smear dye in places that I didn't want it to go. And since they're so long and I don't really have a lot of workspace, I was just using a tarp on the floor. I just thought it was going to be a lot messier and didn't 100% know exactly how the colors were going to come out, and this is how they came out. I think they look really good. I really like the colors and the dimension that I was able to get. Once you put them all together, I think it's pretty much exactly what I wanted. I wanted the brown pieces to be really noticeable. I didn't want them to just be like, you would notice if they weren't there, but you don't really notice if they are there. I wanted them to be like pretty apparent, but not taking over. So depending on which pieces you grab, you know, it all kind of looks a little bit different, which I think will make it easier to blend with my hair, since it's not a super like across the board method. I can just kind of pick and choose and kind of randomly pick pieces that I want to do darker or bring them down farther or shorter and lighter. and just kind of alternate like I did with the extensions, and they should come together pretty seamlessly, I'm hoping. Now that those are done, let's go ahead and start on my hair. And here is a quick little clip of the extensions in daylight that I for some reason felt was necessary to leave in, even though this video is almost an hour long. But here they are close up in the light. I definitely love how they came out. Clearly, I know they're not perfect. I'm sure hairdressers everywhere are screaming right now, but I am enormously proud of what I was able to accomplish with these, considering my skill level, or lack thereof I should say, and what I was going for. Felt very ambitious at the time, but they came out pretty good and I'm pretty happy. So now I'm just setting up a similar workstation at my desk as I did with the extensions. I'm just getting all of my colors in separate bowls and organizing them. So my game plan here is to pretty much try to recreate the exact same process that I did with the extensions with my hair, to obviously make them match as much as possible. So what I'm doing is I'm starting at the bottom and working my way up. I will slice a piece, hold up the rest, I'm going to slice again, and then I'm going to weave that piece and apply that 7 and W either all the way down, 50% of the way down, 25, 75, and I'm just going to kind of alternate back and forth between how far I bring each one down. I'm also going to be kind of varying how much hair I leave in these little lowlights. I don't want the brown to be super overwhelming, so I'm kind of going to alternate between taking really big weaves and really little weaves, and again going all the way or part of the way down, back and forth. I also just wanted to quickly point out that I realize you can see this isn't the first section I actually did. The first section I did was on the back, and I used a time lapse on my camera, and it just ended up being way too fast and way too hard to see in detail, so I ended up showing this clip first so that I could explain what I was doing. You could actually see a lot better and a lot closer up than in the time lapse view. So now I'm going to switch to the first section I actually did. So if you could tell, I have a very large mirror positioned in front of me and a very large mirror with big bright lights on it behind me as well. So even though this was pretty difficult to navigate on the back of my head, kind of switching everything from what feels comfortable to being backwards, I was able to see, and that made a huge difference. So I am done with the low light portion. I have put all of the hair into the foils that I want to be completely brown. Now what I need to do is blend out my roots that didn't end up in the foils with that 8G. So I'm just going in between all of those foils that I did and putting that 8G down a few inches all across my whole head. You can see in a few of these clips I used this teasing method where you backcomb a little bit of your hair and dye what's left out, just so that when it gets combed down you have pieces that fall into the non-colored section. That was really difficult to manage, so I didn't stick with that very often, but I did do it a few times around my head. after I have washed out all of the low lights. I did wash it out in sections about 10 minutes apart, but this is when it's all completely washed out. So now what I need to do is tone the blonde parts that are left, and to do that I'm just going to mix my toner into a bottle. You don't have to have dry hair to tone your hair. I think you're even suggested to have towel dried hair, so my hair is towel dried. I've mixed up my toner and I'm just going to loosely apply that all over the blonde. So for my bangs, I thought it would have been kind of weird if I put lowlights in them as well. So I did leave them out. I did not put any brown in them or the 8G. All I did was put toner. Looking back, it did make them stand out quite a bit more than the rest of my hair, so I might have redone that if given the opportunity, but they still look fine. Hi, I'm back, and my hair is done. Well, my hair is far from done, but the dyeing portion is complete, finally, and I love it. I know it's not like too much different. I mean, like I think it's a lot different. My roots are the same, but you can just see my hair is a lot more toned, a lot more dimensional. There's a lot of different colors going through it now. It's kind of like darker underneath. I don't know, it's just really cool. I've never had like dimensional hair. I've always just had like one color hair or like rooted hair, but I've never had like natural blonde. I don't know if this would be like natural blonde, but like natural colors at the same time. This is what we're working with. I think it's going to blend super well. Like I said, I have all kinds of different pieces in here, so I'm gonna have to plan out which pieces I intended to put where and kind of play around and see what looks best. But I am so excited to see how it comes out. Today's portion is going to be the applying the extensions to my head, and this went pretty well actually. This went pretty smoothly. I didn't have to like redo anything with my hair. None of the colors came out wonky. So I've done a lot of extensions on myself over the years. I've done micro bead extensions. I've like sewn my own clip-in extensions, tape-in extensions on myself. A lot of different methods out there, but I have not done hand-tied extensions because of the pandemic going on right now. It's just not an option for me to get them done, so I've decided to take it upon myself to learn as much as I can about this application method and just trying it out. I also wanted to point out that these extensions were sent to me by Bohemi. This is not like a sponsored video. I'm not being paid for this video or to say absolutely anything. They just sent these to me, which is so awesome for me to be able to do this on myself during this time. With hand-tied extensions, like I said, I have had them done for me once before, and that was the only experience I had with them. I have watched a lot of videos on this, and pretty much what I've gathered is this isn't really something that someone who isn't either a certified hairstylist or someone who specializes in extensions like as a profession should really be doing to themselves, or anyone. It's something that is taught in education classes for hairstylists. So if you have your cosmetology license and you want to expand over into extensions, you would go to like an education class to learn how to do this process. It's something that you pay for, and then you can offer at your own salon or do yourself, whatever. with things like that, you know, you're not going to find super in-depth guides on exactly how to do it yourself at home. I've decided to take it upon myself to learn as much about this method as I possibly could. Obviously, without being a hairstylist and being able to go to specific education courses, the information is severely limited. When hairstylists do post videos on their YouTube of like hand-tied extensions and their method and stuff, it's usually really small snippets, which, I mean, of course that makes sense because they're paying a lot of money to be able to learn this, and they're not just going to turn around and give that information out for free. And beyond that, you know, you don't want this kind of stuff to go into just anyone's hands. The reason it's behind, you know, a paywall and a certification wall is because it really is something that you need to be trained to do. But I have been practicing on myself for so many years that I am comfortable and ready to accept the outcome of whatever I end up with as a result of me doing my own hair. So I'm accepting the responsibility of whatever may happen, and so I'm okay with moving forward and just testing things out and trying to save some money. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making a line of beads across my hair. So I'm going to be parting it in a very specific way, and I'm going to take small pieces and attach a bead to those small pieces. So for instance, if this was the piece, I would take a bead, put it here, and then I'm also going to take some string, and I'm going to put the string in the bead and clamp it down so it creates sort of like an anchor. And then I'm going to repeat that along the whole back of that line that I've created. And what that's going to do is just going to create this nice anchor for the extensions so that I can actually have something to sew them onto. From the outside looking in, seems pretty simple and straightforward, but having never done this specific method or actually seen it done beginning to end, like I said, all the videos I've seen are very small clips, and they usually don't show the very beginning or ending process. It's usually like a small portion of the middle. And so I'm just going to try to do my best to fill in the gaps of what I'm supposed to be doing there. I'm not by any means saying that this is the way to do it or that you should also do this at home. This is just kind of a fun experiment for me and doing my best to achieve my hair goals during this quarantine here. So that's what this is going to be about. This isn't an instructional video or how to, you know, break up with your hairdresser and do all your hair at home now. This is just me experimenting, having fun. And again, I'm not a professional, and do not do what I'm doing unless you're ready to, you know, accept the responsibility like I am of what the outcome may be. Could be a disaster, I don't know. But I'm gonna try it out and hopefully it works out. So I'm gonna show you the tools that I bought in preparation for this process. I found, I think, everything on Amazon. Some must-haves are beads. So there is brown, black, and blonde. So depending on what color the hair is at the root will determine which color bead you're going to use. So for instance, my hair is mostly blonde, but at the root it's pretty dark brown. So I'm going to be using this dark brown one because these are just going to be at my root. And then of course, with beads you will also need string. From what I gathered, there are a few different kinds of string that you can use. The one that I saw people using the most was nylon string, and so that's just what I got. I don't know. Some really small hair clips. Another thing that I'll need is a bead applicator tool. So that's something that looks like this, and basically you'll see me use this, but how this works is you take a bead, and I've actually seen a lot of people like load up a bunch of beads on here, so you don't have to just load them up one at a time. And so you place the bead on top of the applicator tool like this and squish it all the way down to the end. So this is where you could stack up like 5 or 6 beads if you want to just pop them all on there and then use them as you go. And what this is going to do is it's going to make it just insanely easier to be able to get a tiny piece of your hair inside of this bead. honestly, I don't think it's possible to do it without a tool. Let's say I want to take this piece of hair and put a bead around it. So what I would do is use the wide part of the tool and place my hair inside of it. So now my hair is inside the tool, and if I pull the bead up, what it's going to do is pull my hair through the bead, and now there's a bead on my hair. And the idea with the extensions is when you put this at the root and attach a string to it, it's now going to create, like I said, an anchor. And you really don't want to put that strain on your natural hair either, because that can cause breakage. So the idea with the beads is you want to place them there, and you want to place them evenly apart so that the weight distribution is kind of even across all of the beads, and it's taking the weight off of your actual hair, because you don't want it to be like too heavy in one spot, and that's because you're just going to start to see breakage. Again, based on what I gathered, that is not fact, that is my opinion. So we have bead, string, bead applicator tool, and then with the string you'll need a sewing needle. Pretty much across the board I saw really large curved sewing needles used. So something like this, where you can attach the string inside and then kind of use this in a curved motion to sew. In order to actually close the bead, you're going to need pliers. So I have these pliers that came with a set. They're a little bit curved, so it's easy to kind of see what you're doing and not have to push pliers against your head. The reason that I'm doing this now and I'm not explaining it in the video as I'm doing it is because I think it would be a little too overwhelming for me to try to explain what I'm doing as I'm doing it, and also not really knowing what I'm doing. So I'm gonna try to take a little bit of pressure off myself by kind of explaining the basis of what I'm doing now so that it kind of makes sense when you see it. And then I'm going to show you the time lapse of me doing it, and I'll probably voice over a little bit to kind of reiterate the process as I go, but I'm not going to be actually speaking during this process because it's going to take a very long time. Luckily I kind of spread this out over a few days of work, so I only have to do this extension part today, and then I'll be trimming them as well and styling them. But I imagine that just putting them in and getting them sewn in is going to take multiple hours, probably like 3 or 4 hours. I'm just gonna either watch a movie or listen to some music and zone out, and then kind of explain to you guys in the voiceover a more condensed version of that process, so I'm not just rambling on and on like I am now. That is really all the tools that I'm going to use to attach them. I still don't exactly know how I'm going to do this in the back of my head without being able to see. We'll see how this goes. I'm hoping for the best, and really at the end of the day I am fine with how it looks. I just don't want to do it so improperly that it causes my hair to break prematurely. So I'm gonna really try my best to do a thorough job and really take my time and be really precise, just because, like I said, I don't want to cause more of my hair to break. My hair is really thin and damaged from bleaching, and I have a lot of split ends from using heat, so I just want to do her right. I don't want her to be any more mad at me than she already is. So let's hope we can get a nice clean application and preserve the health of my hair as much as possible. So I guess let's get started. Oh my god. Okay. So again, here is just a quick overview of the tools that I'm going to be using to get these into my hair. The micro beads in brown, some sewing needles, curved and large, the nylon string, bead applicator tool, the small hair clips, and some pliers. Okay, so first things first, I have to make a part around my head where the beads are going to go. I definitely took my time on this. I used a lot of clips, as you can see. I wanted it to be somewhat rounded, so higher in the front and lower in the back. This is going to be my top row for the top row of extensions. Normally I would start with the bottom and work my way up, which I intended to do. I just wanted to map out where I wanted the top and bottom, and then I ended up just starting on the top anyway. So this is me fiddling around with that first bead. It actually took me quite a long time to figure out the best way to get the string in there. What I ended up doing is taking a long piece of string, pulling it all the way through the sewing needle so that it was in half and I had both ends together at the very end, and then I tied it off by tying a knot around the end of that. So I had a double string that I was going to be using the entire time. And in order to start this, I took the needle through the bead and fed it in between the two strings. I know it's really hard to imagine, it's not easy to explain either, but I think if you just look at the video, it would explain a lot easier than me just talking. So for this one, I am taking a piece of hair, going to be taking that bead applicator tool and pulling a bead through it. And before I clamp the bead down, I'm actually going to take the string from the first bead and feed it through the top. And then as you can see, this is what I was talking about, where I feed the needle through the two strings so that it creates kind of a knot. And then I have to kind of carefully pull the entire string through without getting it wrapped around all my hair and getting a knot in the string itself. This definitely took some finessing. I undid and redid this many times before getting it to work. After a while I did get the hang of it, but you can see the struggle is real on this first bead. So now that I have it pulled tight, I'm going to take my pliers and clamp the bead down. And you can see I have a nice little bridge between bead 1 and bead 2 now. And the idea is that I'm just going to repeat that all the way around this part to create that anchor. Now, I try to do my best to make these evenly spaced apart. You'll notice that didn't exactly happen, but I, to be fair, could not see very well at all, and it ended up working out. So you can see this one took me much less time to figure out now that I kind of had a hang of exactly what to do with the string. My goal here is to find a way to feed the string through the bead the exact same way every time so that the string comes out on top every time. It would have been easy to weave through the top, come out the bottom, and then go back through the top on the next bead, but then the string would have been going from the bottom of one bead to the top of another bead, so it would have been this kind of diagonal line, and I really had to make sure that it was a straight line. So it took a while to figure out how to do that, but it definitely worked out, and I cut out all of me struggling to figure that out for you, so you don't have to watch it. I will walk you through that process again slowly once I start the next row and had a better idea of my method, just so you can see again if it didn't make sense the first time. So now I'm just going to create another horseshoe part a couple inches down from the first row. So starting on row 2, I slowed this down to normal speed so I can walk you through the process the best that I can. I've taken a very small piece of hair, put it through the bead applicator tool, and pulled a bead up in order to get my hair through the bead. I saw a video where someone clipped the hair upside down while they worked with the string, which actually made it so much easier to work with since I only have 2 hands. So I just clipped that upside down, and then I took my string, same as the first one where I pulled it in half and tied it at the end, and then I'm actually going to feed it through the bottom, which would be the top when it's upside down, and then pull the string through the 2 pieces right into the middle and pull it all the way tight so that it creates a knot around that bead. This was definitely hard in the beginning when the string was really long. I had to be careful not to let it knot before it got to the end. So this is the actual speed I was doing it the entire time. You can see it created a nice little knot, and then once I had that, I could just unclip the hair now that the string is in it and clamp the bead down tight. So I'll go over that one more time at normal speed. I'm just going to take another small section of hair. I'm trying to keep the beads around 1 to 2 inches apart, as long as it's consistent across the board. So I have the next piece of hair, taking the bead applicator tool, pulling it through, and then pulling a bead up, which just puts my hair through the bead, taking it upside down and clipping it up to the top so that I can have a free hand and I don't have to hold the bead on there while I'm working with the string. And now I'm going to take my sewing needle and feed it from the top to the bottom, which, since this is upside down, is actually the bottom to the top. And then you can see I split the string that's doubled down the middle and feed the sewing needle through the middle of the 2 strings. And then I'm just going to pull that all the way tight, again kind of using my finger to make sure it doesn't get knotted around any of my hair or itself, and pulling it completely tight and creating a knot around the bead. So with this method, it kept the string consistent to where it wasn't going up and then down and up and then down. You can see it creates a straight line across all of the beads, and that's what I wanted, to have a straight line to be able to sew the extensions into. And then I'm just going to pull that tight and clamp down the bead. And now I'm just going to repeat that around the entire line that I've created around my whole head. This was actually the biggest inconsistency that I made, was right here in between these 2 beads. I was trying to make it not go right above my ear so it would be uncomfortable, but I didn't see how big of a difference the gap was between the first 2 and the second 2, but the rest of them I did keep pretty consistent. So now that I finished both rows of the beads and string, I'm going to take the extensions and I'm going to stack them and kind of map out where I want them to go. So I'm going to do 2 rows of 5 pieces each, and I just kind of stacked them and used the clips to hold them together so that I could hold it up against the row and see how it will actually look before I sew it in. So now that I'm happy with the placement, it's time to start sewing. So for this, I set up my thread the same as I did with the beads, where I took a long piece, fed it through the needle, and pulled it in half so that both ends were touching at the very end of the string, and tied them together. I then started sewing this by feeding the sewing needle through the top and feeding it back in between the 2 pieces of string, just like with the bead, and then pulling it tight to create a little bit of a knot. So here is a close-up in real time so you can see this process a little bit easier. So I'm going to take my sewing needle and, well, first I'm going to pull my string super tight, and then I'm going to take my sewing needle and feed it through the top and back out the bottom. And when it comes out the bottom, I'm going to make sure that it's on the inside of the loop that it's created. So you can see there's that little loop. I want to pull the string through it. And then pulling it super, super tight, straight up. And then I'm just going to keep repeating that very close together as I can, to make this super secure, and then also making sure that the needle is going through the anchored string that the beads are attached to, because that is, of course, the whole point of them being there. So I'm just going to repeat that process around the whole line of extensions, and once I get to the end, I am actually going to go over it a whole bunch of times to make sure that it doesn't unravel or come loose. So once I finish up sewing that second row, I'm just going to tie a whole bunch of knots in the end to ensure it doesn't ever come loose. So now I'm just going to take my hair down from the little bun that it was in, and I'm just going to kind of brush everything together and straighten everything through so it's all nice and blended. So this is my hair with both rows of extensions straightened. I haven't cut into these at all yet, but I just wanted to show. I think the color matches really, really nicely and it feels really good and secure. So now all that's left to do is cut into the extensions to blend them with my hair. And I do want to take off a couple inches off the bottom like I mentioned earlier, kind of give myself a medium length haircut. All that's left to do now is style these. I do like to have some nice loose curls in my hair, so I'm just going to quickly style these by curling them with my straightener. If you want a more in-depth tutorial on how I do this, just let me know. This is just kind of a quick job. It was really, really late and I was exhausted, but this is going to be the final step before I show you the big reveal. Okay, so there you have it. That is my hair. Overall, I think it looks so good. I'm so happy with the color. It has this nice like muted beigey, almost like honey blonde brown tone to it, and I just absolutely love that. I love that it has like a nice gradient, that it's super dark on top and nice and light on the bottom. So it's like a cool transition. Yeah, I just love the tone of it, that it's like super muted. I will say that it does look a lot different depending on whether you're inside or outside or using artificial light or natural light. When you're outside in the day, it looks a lot warmer and a lot lighter. You can see the blonde a lot better. When you're inside using artificial light, it does look darker and a little bit more cool toned, but I actually like that it's kind of, it varies depending on the light. Overall, I really, really love the color. I love the low lights. I mean, you know, it's not perfect. I wasn't striving for perfection, but I think for being basically free, doing it all myself and not having any training or experience at all, I am super happy with what I was able to accomplish and how much money I was able to save, and it was actually a really fun experiment. It was honestly not as hard as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be much more frustrating. I will say that the actual extension portion of the process had a huge learning curve. I cut out probably like an hour's worth of me just fiddling with starting either the bead or the sew-in, that I was just putting it in, taking it out, putting it in, taking it out, and I did it so many different times trying to get the good rhythm of, you know, whether I put it down and pull it up or put it through this string, and yeah, not knowing and not having someone tell you or being able to see a visual representation of that left room for a lot of guessing. And so I really just kind of tried something out, didn't work, undid it, tried something else until I figured out a way that I thought looked closest to the examples I was following and seemed like it would make the most sense moving forward. So yeah, that was tricky to begin, but then once I got started, it was easy to apply that method to the rest of my head. I think a huge factor was the fact that I spread it out over like 3 different days. I split it up into 3 days of work, but I put days in between those work days as well, if that makes sense. So I spent 1 day just doing the color on the extensions, and then I would take a few days off, and then I spent 1 day doing the color on my hair and I took a few days off, and then I spent another full day putting the extensions in my hair and cutting and styling and so on. And then obviously I was able to get ready the next day and film that little hair montage for you guys. So I really did spread this out so as not to put so much pressure and workload on myself, and obviously with quarantine right now there's nothing but time, so that was really nice to be able to do that. And that was like the least pressure I felt on like one of these hair transformation type experiments. And yeah, I'm, like I said, really happy with how it came out. These extensions are amazing. They feel like butter. They feel so nice, and they blend so well with my hair. Like if I'm just turned to the side like this, it looks like this is the entire length of my hair. Like you wouldn't know my hair actually ends right here, and then these are extensions. It just, they blend so nicely. I am in love with these extensions. I'm in love with this color. I just go to sleep, wake up, and here they are, all ready for the day. It makes me feel so much more ready in the morning when I have nice hair already done. I don't want to ramble on in this video anymore. I'm sure you are sick of hearing my voice. I know I am, but I just wanted to recap and kind of tell you guys a little bit about how I felt about the whole process overall and how I thought it went and whether it was doable. And I think that, you know, it is a lot of work, and it did take a lot of focus and trial and error and just kind of being prepared to accept the results no matter what they are. But like I said, I'm super happy with how they came out. I've never had hair like this before, where it's like super dimensional and a lot of different colors and still on the natural side of things. And I just absolutely love it. I can't get enough of this hair color, and I think as it fades, it'll kind of, you know, shift and change, and as my bangs grow, it'll evolve into something else. Maybe I'll add some more colors into it, but for now, I just absolutely love it. I'm so happy. So let me know if you have any questions about this process or anything. It feels like I talked forever, but I'm sure that there's some things that I missed, so just feel free to let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me on Instagram. I'm just at phoenixhayley, pretty much everywhere, and I'm much more active on that account. But yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed watching this process. Let me know what you think of my results. And hairdressers, I am so sorry if this was blasphemy for you. I did my absolute best with what I had. This wasn't a tutorial, this was just me filming my process, and luckily it came out great. I have not always been this successful. I've had a lot of horror stories, so just be careful and use your best judgment, but I believe in you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!
I don't know. Nothing is supposed to be in there. You smell something?
It smells old.
I believe. Yeah, I hit my mouth.
All right. Good video.